The Thin Gray Line collection brought to you exclusively by LEOChallengeCoins.com. Collect pins, challenge coins, medallions, emblems, patches, and more at LEOChallengeCoins.com. Visit www.LEOChallengeCoins.com.
Are you willing to become a leader in corrections? And what are some of the leadership foundations we need in corrections? Hi, I'm Gary York, True Prison Stories. If you like this video, please subscribe. To become an effective leader in corrections, you must have good moral and professional character. And if you have this, you've already won part of the biggest battle. Because a leader's beliefs and technical know-how and motives are very important when leading officers in the corrections field. Now, some people are born natural leaders. They just take to it and do very well with it. Others are not born natural leaders, but they do have the intelligence and the job knowledge, so they have to learn the skill of being a leader. And there's nothing wrong with that either. So, when you are becoming a supervisor in corrections, you're going to be a supervisor in a paramilitary and a law enforcement and a public servant capacity. You see, the corrections leader is a very unique position. There's a lot more things that are involved with being a leader in corrections than just your normal job in the private sector. You're responsible for all your people, for all the prison staff when you're in charge. You're responsible for the inmates' safety, and you're responsible for protecting the citizens. It is a highly responsible job, and you have a lot of responsibility to handle with this job. Now, here's a few questions that I think you should ask yourself before you put in for sergeant or above. Are you ready to set the example to follow? Are you ready to exceed the standards and expectations of your officers? Are you ready to demonstrate good conduct on a daily basis? Are you ready to provide guidance and counseling to your officers? Are you willing to praise those officers that do a good job? Are you willing to guide officers with problems? Talk to officers that have personal problems and guide them in the right direction with your agency to get help for their personal problems. It could be anything. Marital issues, financial issues, health issues. You're going to hear it all. You're going to see it all. And you need to be able to direct them and guide them to the right place for help and not ignore their situation. Are you willing to discipline officers that you probably worked with on the front line at one time or another? You may have to counsel them. You may have to write them up. You may have to discipline them. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to work longer hours than your officers? Coming in before shift to get everything ready and make sure your schedule is up to date. See who called in sick. See who you have to call in to help because you're short-staffed. That's always going to happen in this profession of corrections. Are you willing to stay after work to finish your paperwork, to make sure the reports are correct, to turn them in to administration? Are you willing to come in early or even stay after shift to attend those administrative meetings where they want the sergeants or above to be in those meetings so they can have their input? There's a long list of things that you need to be willing to do, and you need to ask yourself if you're willing to do it. Now, if you're not willing to do any of those I just mentioned, if you answered no to any of those questions, step back, take some time, don't apply yet. You're not ready to become a supervisor, in my opinion. In my opinion. Now, if you were not willing to do any of those things, ask yourself why. Ask yourself what you need to do. Maybe life at home is just not the right time where you'd be able to do those things. I've seen it before. People have waited a year or 2 or 3 years longer before putting in for sergeant because of something that's going on at home. A young child they want to be with, a young child they need to spend some time with to get them a little older, to an age where they can be handled by another family member or picked up by another family member from school, things like that. Those do impact if you want to be a supervisor or not, because you're going to spend some very long hours at the prison or the jail. It's going to be longer than your officers, because your officers come to work, do their shift, they might do some overtime, and then go home. But they can go home and go to sleep and rest, hopefully, because of the mandatory overtime and trying to wind down. But that's another story in itself. But you may have to stay and get that paperwork done, get that paperwork caught up. You have to get the schedule ready for the next day and make sure everything's lined up right. So there's a lot of things that are going on. Now, the purpose of leadership, you're going to have to realize, and I hope that many agencies out there are going to have mandatory leadership training that you can take even before you become a sergeant. You know, when I left the state prison and went to the sheriff's office, they let us take mid-management class. It was a 64-hour class. We took it after work in the evenings. And before I got moved up to master deputy, and I took these classes not only for the incentive pay, of course, but these classes are educational. They give you incentive pay, and they help build you to be a leader if you haven't been a leader before. Now, I'd been a leader in the military, and I got promoted in the Department of Corrections 3 times, but I had never experienced being a leader in the Sheriff's Department. Now, it's a whole new ball game in the jail and the Sheriff's Department. So get all these courses under your belt. Get leadership courses under your belt. Get mid-management courses under your belt. You know, get any leadership courses under your belt that you can, and see if your agency can give you incentive pay for it. Sometimes you get $10 a class, and you can earn up to $130 a month extra in your paycheck for taking these courses. So if you want to become a leader, get some of these courses. And even if you do not want to become a leader, management skills and leadership skills on the floor as an officer are very valuable. So take these classes for all the reasons I said. Education, money, and advancement, if you wish, among the ranks. If you want to be a leader, you need to establish priorities with your officers and focus them and keep them on the task at hand. Now, provide information to your officers with priorities, how you want things done. Motivate your officers and challenge them from time to time. Give them special projects. Let them have some of the responsibility. Maybe you, as a leader, have been assigned a task by your supervisors, and it's a task that is allowed. You can farm it out to some of the officers and say, hey, I want to farm you out a task. I want to see how it comes out and do it. And then please give credit to that officer that you farmed the task out to. Don't be the leader that farms out tasks to the officers and they turn in a very beautiful project, and then you take the credit for it. I've seen it happen. It bites and it lowers the morale. So teamwork. As a leader, it must be teamwork. So if you do farm out a task and then you turn it into the upper management and they praise that task and say how good it is, please give credit not only to yourself but to the officer or officers who helped you complete that task. Very important to be fair and impartial as a leader. Teach your officers the meaning of teamwork. And that's one way to teach them teamwork, because if you take credit for something you assign them to do and they don't get the credit, that is not teaching teamwork. That is teaching me, only I can do this, or so forth. Don't do that to your staff. Keep your officers informed, up to date with information. Now, why do I say that? Every human being who works anywhere likes to be informed and up to date. Do not hold information back from your officers. And let me give you an example. Information about some inmate activity that's going on the compound. Well, I'm sure that 99.9% of our leaders are going to pass that information on, but there's been times when they've forgotten, slipped their mind, or didn't tell them. And it's very, very important to keep your officers informed on inmate activity that you learn from other shifts on the compound, because you as a supervisor should be speaking to the prior shift supervisor and the next shift supervisor and keeping each other informed on what's happening on the shifts so that you can inform your frontline staff on what's going on so that they can be safe. And if you give them jobs and new tasks, human nature, people like to know why they're doing it. You don't have to give a long explanation, because I told you so. Well, you could do that, but that's not, I don't recommend that. You could say, we're doing this because we need to form a information gathering committee, and we're going to do this to see what type of information we can gather on gang activity, and then we might use this information from the front line later on for gang activity or memos or things like that. All types of scenarios you can come up with on why we're going to do something. Just give a brief synopsis on why, and it just makes your troops feel like they're part of you, part of the teamwork, and it makes them want to do the job more. So don't forget challenges, assignments, and keep them informed. As a leader, you're going to have to analyze a lot of problems. So in order to analyze problems quickly and make the right decision in life-saving circumstances for you and your officers and the inmates and the rest of the prison staff, you need to know what's going on. Now, what helps with analyzing problems and solving them quickly and safely? Well, a lot of floor experience helps. I know in today's corrections world, we're getting correction officers promoted to sergeant within 2 to 3 years in some cases. Some of them are very intelligent and they'll have to learn. But the problem is they haven't learned everything yet, in my opinion. And it's really good when you have that floor experience. Experience is the best thing you can have. So I've talked to a couple of people here in Florida who are getting ready to put in for sergeant. But they said they're going to wait 1 more or 2 more years. And I asked them, you're pretty sharp. You seem very sharp. Why are you not going to put in for sergeant now? I want to get some more experience. I have not done everything. In the jails, they like cross-training. They like you to work on the floor. They like you to work in fingerprints. They like you to work in book-in. They like you to work in transportation. They like you to do some overtime at the courthouse. They like you to work in all the areas, weekenders and things like that, which is a great experience because you need to learn all the areas of your jail or your prison so that you know what's going on and you can make quick decisions and the right decisions, okay? Analyze, know your compound, know the layout of your compound, know all the nooks and crannies, know all the hiding places, know all the places that you can't see with the camera, okay? Know all those hidden places within your compound. Because if something goes down and you're a leader and you need to make a decision, you need to be able to foresee what is happening, what could happen, what has happened, and take care of the problem with a good, solid decision. What else can you do to help analyze problems? Learn from people's past mistakes. Learn from those people that made mistakes and know not to do them. There was just a survey on one of the correctional officer sites. Should we post things that officers have done wrong? And it was an overwhelming response of yes, we should. And I was so happy to see that so many of the officers said, we have to learn from those mistakes. We're not trying to make people look bad, but we're trying to teach other officers what not to do. And I thought that was really great that about 300 people said, yes, we should post them, as opposed to maybe 33 people who said no. It is a learning experience. It's a sad thing. It's a sad situation. The truth hurts and it cuts deep. But learn from those mistakes from other officers and you won't make those mistakes. And also learn from the good things that other leaders and officers have done. Watch people who are getting awards. Watch people who are being congratulated. Watch people who are getting letters of appreciation. See what they did. See how they handled situations. See how they handled life-saving situations. See how they handled suicide attempts. See how they handled a fight in the dorm. And the ones that did very well, learn from them. And don't be ashamed to learn from other officers. Even if you're already a sergeant, lieutenant, or captain, learn from those people that do great jobs. That's one way to help analyze problems better. Learn how to recognize different problems in corrections. And, you know, if you've got some time under your belt and had some time on the floor, and now you're a supervisor, you'll learn the quietness of the compound that is not right. When the compound gets too quiet, and many of you know what I'm talking about, it's like, this is too quiet, too much silence. I think something's about to go down, but, you know, just have your head on a swivel, be alert, and look for things like this. That's just a little example I'm giving. Look for the signs. Look for a group of inmates on the rec yard that are over in the corner, and your officers call in and say, we got a large group of inmates over in the corner. Think about, as you're going to respond as a supervisor to the call from your officers, think about the scenario in your head and what's going to happen and what has happened and what could it possibly be, and be prepared with backup. I think everybody knows where I'm getting at with that, being able to analyze problems. Now, here's a big one in my book, and then I'm going to close it out after this one, because I just want to get your mind thinking about, if you want to be a leader, some of the foundations you're going to need to be a leader in corrections. But avoid creating ethical dilemmas for your officers. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, never ask officers to do things that can get them in trouble. Never ask your officers to do things that you would not do. And always remain professional and ethical when telling your officers what to do. For example, recently there's been some bad news in 2019 from Florida and Wisconsin and some other states of some supervisors getting in trouble trying to cover up some things. Yes, here we go. This is one of those things that we don't want to hear, but we must learn from. Do not cover up issues. Do not try to make things look good and then end up falsifying documents or creating evidence that is not there. If you even think you want to do that, you're not what we want as a leader in corrections. You don't need you. Don't apply. Also, don't be a leader that wants to please management so much that you're going to cover up things to make everything look just the way management wants it. Management says, here it is, it's all written out for you by the book, and you just want to please them so much that you forget about your officers and your staff. Remember, your officers and your front line are the most important. Of course, you want to follow the directions and you want to do a great job for your agency. You want your supervisors to see you doing a good job, but you're not going to do a good job for them by covering up. It always comes out in the wash, and it will explode in your face, and in the end, your managers and your agency will get a black eye because it'll be in the newspaper or the news. Do not be a supervisor that creates ethical dilemmas for your officers and get them in trouble. Lead by example, be the example, and don't do things, because if you look bad in uniform, your officers are going to see that and they won't care, and their uniforms will start to go down. If you have foul language towards officers and inmates and everything is foul language, they, or some of them, will begin to pick up on that and think that's okay, and they will begin to do that as well. You have to be thinking ahead on what example you're setting for your officers. So setting goals, and don't set goals that are impossible to reach. Set reachable goals for you, your staff, and your shift. Okay, so as you can see, being a leader in corrections is not just walking around with a cup of coffee in your hand, saying, hey, how you doing, and walk through and walk out. Stop, talk to your officers, ask them if everything's okay, ask them if they need anything, make your frequent appearances, Don't micromanage, but make your appearances and get those officers to trust you, and you will begin to trust them when they do a great job for you, and we will have a good career in corrections. Thank you for watching Gary York True Prison Stories. Please subscribe.